story out of Luke in chapter 6, 6 through 10. I'm just going to go ahead and read it real quick. On another Sabbath, he entered the synagogue and was teaching, and there was a man there whose right hand was withered. The scribes and the Pharisees were watching him closely to see if he healed on the Sabbath, so that they might find reason to accuse him. But he knew what they were thinking, and he said to the man with the withered hand, "Get up and come forward." And he got up and came forward. And Jesus said to them, "I ask you, is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath? To save a life or to destroy it?" After looking around at them, he said to him, "Stretch out your hand." And he did so, and his hand was restored. But they themselves were filled with rage and discussed together what they might do to Jesus. So, Jesus kept constantly trying to make a point to the Pharisees of what they were missing. Um, Throughout generations, they have come about to become so legalized about what God's law is, instead of following it to its true intent and form, they distorted it. It became their source of power and their source of control over the people. Um, so they would use it to punish those that they felt were not worthy of God's love and of God's grace. And so Jesus comes along and he is fulfilling the law of Moses perfectly. But the problem is fulfilling God's law the way that God intended it to be followed. Jesus wasn't following the way that they were saying it had to be followed. Jesus was doing God's work, was obeying the Father. The scribes and Pharisees were obeying the letter of the law that they imposed on the people, their interpretations. So, they started watching Jesus very closely. They needed to find a way to get him out of the picture. Uh, and eventually, this intent of theirs was, of course, to kill Jesus, because Jesus was a threat to their power, to their control, uh, and to their unrighteous judgment over the people. And Jesus, um, he would obey the Father, not their law. I mean, God's law basically wants us to love Him and serve others, to love others. It's all about grace, mercy, and love, and being a servant, first to God, then to others. Well, the Pharisees, they used it as a power chip for themselves. Um, they felt that nobody had the right to know what God law means except for them. as a result, a lot of the Pharisees were very rich. Um, they demanded high respect, you know, and they basically thought they were better than everybody else. Um, and all this blinded them so much that they were failing to see that Jesus was the very prophecy that they had been teaching about come to life and was there in the flesh. That their dedication to traditions and their dogmatic view of their interpretation of what God law said for the people, it blinded them. And here's Jesus doing things that on the Sabbath, healing was one of them. They would they would try to um, find just reason to accuse him, so that that they may kill him, get him out of the picture. Because, like I said, he was a danger. He was a danger and a threat to their power over the people. So Jesus heals this man's withered hand in front of them, and he knows what they're always thinking. So he asks a very simple question. Is it, you know, is helping somebody out more in violation to the law of God than just, letting them die? Of course, the man just had a withered hand. He wasn't dying. But the point was, Jesus was making was, you know, helping others is not against the Sabbath. We should always be helping others. We shouldn't be letting them to suffer no matter what day it is. Um, because it's not the first time that he's healed on the Sabbath. What the Pharisees were doing, they were trying to distort in their mind that his healing, his serving of these folks who were unfortunate in their physical states, um, they were trying to say that he was working on the Sabbath, which the letter of the law forbids them to do anything on the Sabbath but rest. And then when Jesus makes a point to them that it's better to serve others than to not serve them, made him very angry. And in one in part, I think it's because his actions and his questions convicted them all, but they were so prideful and so pious in their own nature that instead of seeing the flaw in what he's trying to say, they just allowed themselves to be angered to the point to where they started talking to each other about what they needed to do. We need to get rid of this man. This man is threatening our status, our power over the people. He's got to go. Um, so today, I guess what we need to be wary of is if the Holy Spirit is trying to show us something we need to be careful about not being like the Pharisees and getting stuck up in our own thinking of what we think is right. Um, that we become angry, or we become so involved in our own selves that we fail to see the overall picture that God is presenting to us. Like with the Pharisees, their distortion of the law was so massive. I mean, they even would add stipulations to God's law, which in itself is a sin. Um, but Jesus was trying to impress on them and teach them that God's law was nothing more than obeying God and helping others without adding stipulations, showing grace, mercy, and love to all. And that's what we need to do. We need to be wary and not get so high on ourselves and our own piety that uh, we become indignant, or when we see somebody do good for somebody else, no matter what that person was on the grand scale of things, we need to become angry, because if somebody's doing God's work, we ought to be praising God and praising Christ for that person's service to whoever they're serving, even if it's in a time that, because of our own prejudices, think it's inappropriate. God's timing is never inappropriate in doing. God's work is always appropriate, no matter where you are and no matter what day it is. So that, I love you guys. You have a blessed day, and we'll see you tomorrow.